I'll tell you something. You know, I've been in radio, hey Nick, for a long time. CB since I was like 10. Want that? No? What, you want chicken? No? Well, what else do you want? Oh, you want one of these? Is that what you want? Yeah, okay. You know, and I actually started fooling around with them and playing and tuning and peaking and pulling them apart and putting them together, you know, when I was like 12, 13. You know, I mean, I've always been around radios. My uncle got me involved many years ago in radio because he was into CB. CB was big back then. And I remember I actually worked when I was like 10 or 11 years old. I worked in a local CB store. It was a little CB shop. It was probably about the size of my shop right here, and it was a neighborhood shop. But with CBs, it didn't make a difference where your store was back then. People would find you, you know. And my neighbor, his name was Paul Young, opened up this store. And I believe it was Winthrop Avenue. Was it Winthrop? Anyway, not important. And he says to me, you want to work after school, come to the store. He says, you can, you know, sweep the floor, you can dust, you can, you know, take out the trash, and, you know, you can talk with the customers, you know, because CB was that way, you know, it didn't make a difference. Oh, great. And that's what I used to do. And then I would get a CB and in the interim, work it off, you know. So, and I always seen the new stuff coming in. Actually, I bought a radio called the Poly Pro. It was a tube, 23-channel tube. My first radio was a 4-channel Globe, crystal, 4 channels. The radio was flat. It was about 1.5 inches, 2 inches high, and it was about 1 foot long and about 10 inches deep, and a mic plug, and A, B, C, D. Volume and squelch. That was it. That was my very first radio. And I had something that appeared to be and looked like what we would call a big stick nowadays. And I went up on the roof. I put it up. Paul went up there with me, and we put up the antenna. And I'll tell you, I remember being on that thing at night, and the 4 crystals that were in there were the most popular with the truck drivers and, you know, around the neighborhood, around your area and things like that. And I had the ability of unplugging a crystal and plugging another one in. And I remember talking to the drivers, truck drivers, over the road for miles and miles. You know, nothing like today, you know, because it wasn't all that noise out there. But it was for miles and miles. I mean, you know, this was in New Haven at the time. I lived across from Hill House when they were building Hill House High, and they were just building it when I was living there, and that's in New Haven. And I remember talking to drivers into New York, you know, all the way through the state, you know. So it was a lot different back then. And then I graduated and I went into that Poly Pro, the Polycom Pro, 23-channel tube. It was, maybe 6, 8 inches high, had all kinds of meters on it, all kinds of buttons and whistles and gadgets. It was probably 1.5 foot wide, 6.5, 7 high, maybe another 10 deep. Same antenna. Wow. Plus I was able to put it in the car. So this was great. Now I can put an antenna in the car, so when the old man's driving, I can talk on the radio. And so that was going strong. And then, because this radio was relatively new, and there wasn't that many of them out, I had like one of the first ones in the area, myself and the owner of the store. I was in East Haven at my grandfather's house, you know, with my parents, and they stole the radio out of the car. Well, again, there wasn't a lot of CB shops around back then. But they left the power plug, and it took a special plug for the power. So they started making calls. Now, I immediately called my boss, Paul. Told him, Paul, there's still a radio on my car, blah, 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 blah. He said, all right. Well, anyway, that night I'm home in the shower, and I get a phone call, all right, from Paul. And again, I was like 12, 14 years old at this time. You know, a couple of years have passed, so I'm still there. But, he says, I got your radio here. He said, the guy came in looking for a power plug. He goes, I said, oh, they stole the radio, they didn't take the plug. Yeah, right. He goes, well, do you have any way of identifying it where you can say it's yours? I go, well, I didn't put any marks on it or anything. He goes, well, listen. He says, when you come in, you're going to say that you put a big B inside the cover in black ink, like a marker. He says, and what I'll do is I'll have it in the back and I'll open it and I'll put the B in there for you. Because they knew it was mine. So it wasn't, you know, we weren't bullshitting. But again, you know, proof. So I go walking in and I walking around and things, and Paul says, Buzz, yeah, did you lose a radio? Yeah, Polypro, right? He goes, do you know how to identify it? I go, yeah. He says, I put my initial inside, a big B, and on the cover. Oh. He goes in the back, he says, like this? I go, yeah. Well, the guy's jaw dropped, because he's the one who stole the radio. Right? I said, yeah, my radio was stolen out of East Haven. I said, it was stolen today. All right, and, well, you know, okay. No, I'm sorry. It was given to me. All right, you know what? Get out of here. And I kept the radio. Naturally, it was my radio anyway, so it wasn't like I was stealing their radio. So, but meanwhile, I've been in radio for a long time. I had a store. I always have 2 or 3 things going at once. I have to keep busy, so I always worked 2 or 3 jobs. All right, that's all there was to it. I had the store, and I was doing bodyguard work for people, and I was working for the FDIC at the time, taking down banks. So I was always busy, you know, in CB. But meanwhile, back in 82, 83, I don't even remember. Someday I'll have to look it up. I went for my ham ticket. And when I went for the ticket, I went direct for the advanced. I'm sorry, the extra. Because back then there were 5 licenses. You had your novice, which was code, and that's about it. And you had 1 year to upgrade to a tech. Then there was a tech, which gave you your 2 meter, 440 stuff. Then you had your general, which gave you a pretty good spread of your general coverage. We'll say from here to here. So you're able to talk on all these big radios. Then they had the advance, which went from there to there. And then you had the extra that went from there to about there. So it only added about that much extra over the advance. But it was the top license. And today that's still the top license, your extra. Well, I said, you know what? I think I know enough about radio, and I know enough about the code. I'm going to go right for the extra. And whatever I get, I get. You know, why go for a tech when I might be able to walk out with a general? You know, that type of thing. I'm going to go for the extra. And whatever I get under that, because if I pass something under that, that's what I get. You know, it's not like if I fail the extra, you know, I don't get anything. You know, they look at it, if I failed the extra, they'll say, well, wait a minute, he passed this one, so let's give him that one. You know, and that's how it used to work. You know, anything under that. So I passed the extra written exam, and when it came to the code, I may have told you the story. It was a U-shaped type layout, and everybody was sitting around the U. Up here was the instructor with a tape recorder, and he says, once I hit the play button, everybody shut up and start writing down what you hear. Okay. You know, and that doesn't mean if you hear dot, 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 you write down dot, dot, dot. You know what I mean? You have to translate it into English. Right? So at that point, he starts and everybody starts. You're listening. You're tense. Your hand doesn't want to move. You know, because you're paying attention. You're nervous. All this shit happens. The guy next to me said, "Oh, wait a minute. I missed something. Can you start that over again?" Well, just by that little interruption, you know, we all lost part of this code. You know, and now we're trying to figure out what happened, and the instructor says no, you know, so now there's a more part of the conversation, you know, and you lose 30, 35 seconds or better of code. Now it's a hit and miss. Well, in this case, there was probably, I don't remember, 12, 14 of us around the table. Only 2 of them actually passed it because of this bullshit. I missed it by 2. Some other guys missed it by 1, by 2, by 4, and it was all because of this jerk. So we said, it wasn't fair. Can you do it over again? Well, in all fairness to the instructor, he says, if I play that one over again, you already know what it is, you know, and I haven't got a new one to play. So it wouldn't be fair for him to repeat the one he just did. You know, if he had another one to do, it would have been different, but he wasn't prepared to have another one to do. Who knows that this guy was going to be an asshole? So make a long story short, I walked out with the advanced, which is 1 below the extra. I have about that much space that I'm not supposed to talk on. I mean, I've never been there anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. I don't even go up there to listen, to be honest with you. But, so that's where I was at. But again, I've been in radio for many, many, many years. I repaired them. However, I missed out on a lot because I've been out of radio for 30 some odd years. So all that new technology that came out is all brand new to me. Well, now they came out with all this DMR stuff. Well, last year, a friend talked me into buying a DMR unit right there. And I got my code. You need a DMR ID. I got that. And he programmed a plug in it. They call it plug. And that radio works and everything's fine. Well, they came out with a new one now, which is the dual band DMR, which is made by Alinco, which is a nice radio. And here it is. Well, you know what? I have no idea how to program this thing. You know, I really have no idea. And when I'm listening to people, like I found a really good channel, this guy right here. Now he's explaining this. He's got 2 very long videos, but he's doing a real good job explaining the whole thing. However, if you don't quite understand what he's talking about, it's hard to figure out how to do what he's asking or telling you to do. You know what I mean? You know, that's like me telling you put the red on the yellow. Well, if you don't know what red is, you know, how do you know what to put on the yellow? So that's kind of how it works. So I'm finding this somewhat confusing. Now I will get through it. I've been doing a lot of printing, a lot of reading, a lot of listening, and now it's just a matter of building a so-called plug. And then once I get the plug made up, and that's the frequencies basically. Once I get the frequencies that I need and want in the area, you know, which would be the United States, I may go out of the country, I don't know yet, but that's kind of where we're at. So I'm working in a confused state of mind right now. And that little radio, I could talk anywhere in the country with it, as if I was talking to somebody on the phone. Now, it's nice because it's that clear, and I could talk to people I normally wouldn't talk to. However, it takes the enjoyment of trying to make it out of the picture. Because with ham radio, it's always like trying to make that contact. You know, let me try to build a better antenna. You know, let me try to move this or do that. So it's all in the whole thing. You know, that you're encompassing the whole thing to try to get a better signal. so that you can reach that certain person, you know, or how far can I reach if I do this? Well, with the DMR stuff, it takes all that out of the picture, because I know if I want to talk to you, I can just key the mic and talk to you. So, you know, takes the enjoyment out. But again, it's good and it is fun. So, alright, other than that, that's about it. Wife went shopping. I do have a small problem with this unit up here. I turned on the air the other day and I came up with a FO, which means it's a refrigerant issue, the Freon. So I can buy the Freon, but then I'd have to buy the filler, you know, the pump and everything else. And you know what? And then I got to figure out how to do it. And, you know, let me call a friend of mine. You know, he's going to charge me, but he's not going to charge me full price. And let him come out and let him do it. And then I'll see what he had done. So the next time around, depending on what the charge is, you know, I'll decide if I want to do it myself. Usually, you shouldn't have to do it. Once it's done, it's done. Not unless you got a leak. So if there's a leak, he'll find that as well. So that's where we're at. I can buy the Freon 25 pounds for like 115 bucks. But then the fill kit and the adapters and everything else, I'll end up spending another 100 bucks. So then I'll have 200 and better into it, you know. Now 25 pounds of Freon would probably last me forever, even if I did have a small leak. But the thing is, you don't want to send this stuff out into the air. And you don't want to just keep filling it. Let's fix the problem, you know. So he's going to come out so we can take care of that. And there's that new radio as well. That's not DMR, but that's the other Olinco. Like I said, I don't mind owning Olincos. Some people don't care for them too much, but I've never had a problem with them. So, you know, if my son was going to buy a radio and was kind of limited, I'd say buy the Olinco. You're going to get everything that everything else offers, you know, and for, you know, 2/3 the price. So there's nothing wrong with them. All right, guys, I'm done pacing. I'm done talking. I got some reading to do, and I'll be back.